Thank you very much, and what a pleasure and a privilege it is to be with you this evening after a warm and busy day, and to welcome you back as you have made certain choices and decisions on our first night, and then as we moved to the exercise last night, or the night before last night we relaxed a little bit. And tonight we're going to talk about another topic in health. Exciting. I just wonder how many of you have thought about making different health choices. Has anybody thought of that since we started our first meeting? It's really important to do that, to be sure that we are choosing wisely. And every aspect of good health starts with a good choice. And then, of course, we discussed yesterday the really intriguing and important component of exercise in the life. How important that is, not only from the point of view of looking good, but very importantly, of feeling good. And then we correlated that with the importance of exercising your faith. Now, I want to ask the question, did anybody do some intentional exercise today? Anybody? I'm really worried, Elder Wilson. I'm really worried because we should be, I have to share this with you because it makes me feel quite good. This morning at about 6:45, I was quite lonely, but I was in the gym or the exercise room at the hotel and had a very pleasant time. It actually is energizing, it gives you strength, it makes you feel good, and it's what we really need to do. We need to continue though, and when you exercise, and even when you don't, you need to make sure that you take the appropriate amount of liquids. Drinking water is really very important, and particularly when you're living in Manila, where it gets very warm, where the humidity is significantly high, and we lose a lot more water, and particularly when we exercise. I want to share with you the story of Li Ming, who was a retired woman who enjoyed working in her garden. She was very active, and even in an unusual heat wave, that was not sufficient to deter her from tending her flowers and her plants. The temperature rose above 44 degrees. 44, pretty high. On the third day of these record-breaking temperatures, Li Ming's daughter Kim became alarmed because she didn't get a response from her mother. She went to her mother's home and found her lying on the kitchen floor, unconscious. Li Ming's large fan wasn't enough to fight the effects of the heat, and she'd suffered from heat stroke. Heat stroke can be life-threatening. You can lower your risk of heat stroke by drinking plenty of water. And it's not only heat stroke, which is the extreme aspect of heat injury, but just being dehydrated is not healthy. And it manifests in many different ways. Not only does it manifest sometimes with dizziness and as we get low blood pressure because the volume of fluid in the body is decreasing, it can manifest with something as simple as a headache. And that headache could be preempted or prevented by just taking the right amount of fluids on a regular basis. You can lower your risk of dehydration by drinking plenty of water, fruit juice, vegetable juice, and next to air, water is the most vital element that is needed for good health. By weight, you can see that the average adult is 70% of water. So sitting right there where you are and standing right where I am, we are about 70% water. I'm going to be about 65% at the end of this talk, and Elder Wilson's going to be about 50% because he stands here a lot longer in the heat. A baby, a newborn baby, is approximately 75% liquid, fluid, water. And that shows and accounts for the fact that babies dehydrate a lot more quickly than do adults. When you look at various tissues and substances in the body, the gray matter of the brain is approximately 85% of water. Have you thought about that? That inside your skull is this most amazing, wonderful, created computer, which doesn't overheat, but is actually 85% of water. Not plugged into an external power source, doesn't need to be reprogrammed by Microsoft or Apple. It's been wonderfully created. Your blood is 83% water. Muscles, the strong biceps that each of you have from doing your resistance exercises every day, that's 75% water. And even the bone, which we often think of as just being hard and dry tissue, bone is between 20 and 25% water itself. So you see that every tissue, every cell of the body not only contains water, but is also bathed in water, in fluid, and requires water to do each of its important functions. So what I want to remind you of is that much of the body is composed of water and liquid. The most vital organs are predominantly water, and water is essential to a normal functioning life. Water, the liquid of life, is a medium in which metabolism takes place. Now, metabolism is a word meaning where the actual function and activity and the survival of the body takes place. It takes place inside the liquid, which is so abundant inside the body. Water is also the transport system within the body. Liquids are the transport system inside your body. They are providing you with all the nutrients because they are dissolved in the plasma of the blood, in the cells, in fluid around the cells. Liquids are the transport of the body. They're also a lubrication for movement. Every time you flex your elbow, move your legs, turn around, move your jaw, there's a lubrication in the joints, and that is dependent on the liquids in your body. Liquids facilitate your digestion. Where they're not liquids, you wouldn't be able to mix the food that you chew, swallow, and then come the digestive juices, which make such a difference to our nutrition. And so there again we see the importance of liquids. Liquids are also a prime transporter of waste via the kidneys. That's how the body gets rid of some of the toxins or the metabolites, the breakdown products from energy production, from the function of our body, from digestion. The liquids in your body take those and get rid of them via the kidneys. Of course, as we remember from our very first story, water is extremely important and liquids are important in temperature control. You know that our bodies are beautifully regulated. They have been so wonderfully and cleverly created. And they created in such a way that your temperature is usually and always 37 degrees Celsius. Part of the important components of temperature regulation is related to the amount of fluid in your body. And how do you think that that regulates temperature? By the perspiration that takes place. As fluid comes through the pores of your skin and evaporates off the skin, it cools the body and is an important regulator. Liquids are an important constituent of blood, which circulates and does all the good things, taking oxygen to all the tissues, helping to get rid of the waste products, and also carrying vital nutrients to every part of the body. Now, where do these liquids that we're talking about come from? Well, about 2/3 of them come from the liquids that you take in, the bottles of water that you drink, the watermelon that you eat. You know, that's one of the wonderful things about being here in the Philippines. You have some of the most lovely, sweet, delicious fruits that we eat anywhere in the world. Watermelon, different kinds of honey melon. And 2/3 of the liquid that you have in your body comes from the foods and fruits that you eat. 2/3 from ingested liquid, 1/3 from what you eat in food, and that was what I was talking about, those wonderful fruits. And then about a very small percentage, almost negligent really, of water is produced by the various metabolic processes of the body. And in those chemical processes which take place, which keep you alive, keep you thinking, keep you active, keep you mobilized, there is water which is produced. That's a small amount. But remember that the most important intake is from the 2/3 that you ingest, and then 1/3 from your fruits, vegetables, and other foods that we take in. Fruits and vegetables have a generally higher content of water, and the examples as I've given you are watermelon, papaya, citrus, strawberries, all those delicious fruits, and then of course the cucumbers, the squash, broccoli, celery, tomatoes, all of those have a significant content of water in them. Then we come to the way that the body ideally maintains this wonderful balance. Normally, the average individual will produce about 2.3 liters of urine a day, between 1.5 and 2.3, and also sweat, and also the amount of liquid and fluid that you lose through water vapor on the breath. It's about 2.3 liters, and that means we need to take in about that same amount. When you're exercising and doing a lot of exercise and hard work in a hot environment, you can lose up to 6.6 liters of fluid. That's a huge amount. It's a lot. This table shows you how sweat is excreted 50 times quicker under conditions of prolonged heavy exercise compared to low activity in normal temperatures. Now, here's a very important component or aspect of this fact. People often say, how much water should I drink? It's not the same everywhere in the world for everybody. It depends how hot it is. It depends how active you are. It depends on all these factors, and if you're exercising and exercising in a hot environment, you need to take in more liquids. And so all of these factors are important to keep our water in balance and keep our body functioning absolutely perfectly. When we don't provide the body with adequate water, in order to avoid dehydration, the body has amazing balance, what we call homeostatic mechanisms. That just means it keeps the environment inside the body absolutely perfect. And so there's a decreased production of sweat, a decreased production of urine, and this is supposed to keep as much fluid in the body to keep your blood pressure up, keep the circulation going. But of course it comes at a certain cost. Ultimately, dehydration occurs. And when that occurs, the cooling mechanism, as I mentioned to you earlier, begins to fail. The blood pressure drops, the temperature rises, there's an inefficient clearance of body waste, the blood thickens, and blood flow becomes impaired. And here's a very interesting and important fact, one which was first discovered for the first time, or first documented at Loma Linda University, that they found that people who drink adequate amounts of liquids, adequate amount of waters, have a decreased incidence of heart attacks. That's interesting. because the water you take in keeps the blood from becoming too thick and sticky, so it doesn't clot as readily. And so importantly, not only to keep all the other functions going, but to have a happy heart, a healthy heart, make sure that you drink enough liquids. Insufficient water intake also gives rise to constipation. And this is something that the laxative industry is very pleased about, because you see, a lot of money is spent around the world on laxatives, and that's a very readily treated situation just by drinking lots of water and taking good fiber. So dehydration may also cause dizziness, headaches, we've talked about that, and of course during the prolonged exercise, that is a significant problem. Drinking an adequate amount of water decreases the risk of getting kidney stones and also decreases the risk of gallstones. So you can see the benefits, the important benefits of taking something as simple as water on a regular basis, drinking it regularly, and making sure that this is something that you care for. It's interesting that in 1995, a study was done and produced by the American Medical Association, which called attention to this very important problem and component of taking adequate water. They studied elderly people. And what they found is that it's estimated that millions of dollars could be saved each year if people, particularly older people, would take in adequate amount of fluids. You may have noticed that as one gets older, and as you've observed your parents, your family, older family members, as they get older, they become more and more sensitive to fluid deprivation. Not uncommonly, an older person will become confused just because they are dehydrated. So the importance of making sure that at all ages, but particularly what we call the extremes of age, the very young and the older, get adequate amount of water, because it can be life-saving. Now, again, we come to the question, well, actually, how much should we drink? You know, there are people who say 6 to 8 glasses, they say a certain percentage of your body weight, but really, the real test and the easiest test is the test with your own eyes. And how do you do that? You observe the color of your urine. You know, we're talking about quite important medical things tonight, and we talk about it very clearly. And that's an important thing for you to remember. The clearer the urine, the more certain you are that you're taking enough liquids. If you're not, the urine will become dark, and you've noticed this phenomenon, I'm sure. And as you drink adequate liquids, firstly, you will no longer be thirsty. You won't have dry mouth, you won't have dry eyes, but a good way of assessing is just look and make sure that the urine is a nice, healthy, pale color. Of course, remember that sometimes if you're taking certain medications, that can also change the color of the urine. But that's in those who are taking that kind of medication. Certain vitamins, certain tablets for tuberculosis do that. But generally, a very good test is to take water until your urine is a nice, clear color. Then you know that you're adequately hydrated. Start drinking water first thing, and we talked on our first evening about the choice that you make to have breakfast every morning. On rising, one of the first things you should do once you've taken care of whatever needs you may need to take care of is drink water. Instead of doing what so many people around the world do, they reach for the coffee or the tea. Interestingly and important for you to know that the caffeine in coffee and tea is what we call a diuretic, which stimulates the loss of fluid. What you really want to do, you want to take pure, clear, healthy water. Drink at least 2 glasses on waking, And that's going to take care of the fluid loss that you've had overnight, breathing, perspiring, and particularly here in the hotter areas, you need to remember to do that. Be sure to drink water that is pure and clean, and water is the best liquid that you can take because it's free of calories, it doesn't have sugar added to it. You know, I'll never forget, and this was to me a lesson which those of you who know me a little better than many of you will, I don't always have a problem in having an answer to some of the issues which come my way. But I was sitting in a restaurant in Europe with some friends, and in fact, it was at the Geneva conference in 2009. And the waiter came to the table, and he said, well, can I get you something to drink? And he'd been around the table, and he came to me, and I said, yes, I'd like something. I said, do you have anything sugar-free? And he looked at me, and he was German. He said, we have water. And I thought, you know, I was a little bit chagrined, you know. I thought, you're such a smart fellow. But as I thought about it, he was an extremely smart fellow. Because I thought about what he said to me, and from then on, chose my sugar-free drink always to be water. Because it doesn't have additives, it doesn't have all kinds of other things, it has no calories in it, and of course it doesn't have alcohol in it. You know, most soft drinks are loaded with sugar. And then patients would often say to me, well, doc, what about the fruit juice, the pure fruit juice? Can't I drink as much of that as I want to? Well, I want you to think about this. You take a glass of orange juice. How many oranges do you think it would take to produce that one glass of orange juice? Probably at least 3. In that, there are a number of calories, very little fiber. And so what we're doing is we're taking in quite a lot of calories for the amount of fluid, where you could with water take in the same amount and have no calories. And the water is there to help the fiber you'll be taking in the fresh orange that you will be eating. So important to remember, rather go for the whole fruit, go for the sugar-free water, and you'll be free of obesity, diabetes, dental decay. The benefits are tremendous. Of course, there's another very important component and aspect of water. Water is a cleansing agent. You know how important and how refreshing it is to have a lovely shower, a fresh bath. It removes the accumulated dirt. And here's another important health tip. You know, each evening they talk about family health tips. Here's one for you to remember, which is very important. If you want to decrease the amount of infections, colds, flu, wash your hands. Now, when we say wash your hands, we don't mean this little, just pass them under the water, under the tap, and maybe a little bit of soap, and that's the end of that. Wash them. And you wash them for a certain amount of time. How long do you think that is? The amount of time it takes you to sing Happy Birthday one time through. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, that's not long. I would love you when you get home this evening and you've been to the washroom and you wash your hands. Give yourself an idea of how long it should be that you should wash your hands. If more people thoroughly wash their hands, there would be such a significant reduction in the passage of various diseases. You know, so often people do all kinds of things with their hands, and then a moment or two later they shake yours. You really want to make sure that you wash your hands regularly. Then there's another fascinating component to the subject of liquids, and that is that hydrotherapy, the use of water not only inside by drinking it, but using it on the outside can be very helpful, and is a big help when you come to applying it to simple muscular aches and pains and bruises. And when dealing with these, usually the muscular aches, apply hot, wet towels and cold ones, and always end with a cold application to the affected part. This improves the blood flow, and if a recent injury has happened, then it's best to use an ice pack. Ice packs make a huge difference when there's a recent injury, and especially one needs to be concerned when you have individuals who may have diabetes or have a nerve problem. Be careful of extremes of hot and cold, because they're not always able to sense that adequately, and damage may be caused. There are many modes of hydrotherapy, including the cold mitten friction, hot foot baths, heat compressors, and ice compressors. It's unfortunate that so few of us use it. We tend to go for the more esoteric or complex types of treatment. But what we really need to use is often the simple, clear, clean uses of water. A little story, a little anecdote. There was a man who was playing badminton. This is a true story. And he injured his elbow, and after playing the game, decided that he would need to get medical help. But before he went off the court, one of the assistants came to him with an ice pack and said, "Please place this ice pack on your elbow and it'll make you feel much better." He said, "You know, I don't believe in that sort of thing." And the next day, when he had this big bruise, he went into his physician, and the physician said to him, "Well, I think that what you need to do, there's nothing broken here. I'm recommending that you use an ice pack," and charged him $100 for that advice. The man never forgot that, and I hope you never forget it either. The external application of water is one of the easiest and most satisfactory ways of regulating the circulation of the blood. But many have never learned to use this kind of approach. In the Ministry of Healing, we read in page 237, a wonderful book, an inspired book. All should become intelligent in the use of water in simple home treatments. Now, here are a few tips as we close off, some family tips. Avoid wasting water. Don't leave the tap or the faucet running when you brush your teeth. Switch it off in between. Install toilets and showers that don't leak. Make sure that those faucets are well repaired. Be careful of the continuous small dripping over time, which can turn into huge amounts of wasted water. We need to be careful about pollution of water. One of the things that to me is very sad, and you see it right here, you see it right around the world, is the pollution of water. We need to be careful and to avoid that. One of the ways that you can conserve water, and one of the most helpful ways that you can conserve water, is by taking a vegetarian diet. And you may say, well, what's that got to do with conserving water? Well, the kind of foods that vegetarians eat take much less water to produce than meat. And so here you're seeing an added and very significant benefit. Life cannot exist without water. I think you've seen that tonight. You realize it from your day-to-day experience. Water cleanses, it refreshes, it aids the body's restoration. And similarly in our spiritual lives, we cannot live eternally without water. Just as much as we have this fearfully and wonderfully made body, which requires water for its life, I'd like to just dwell for a moment on what does the water of life really mean. Apart from keeping your body healthy, I'd like to share with you and remind you that 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ met a woman in Samaria who came to a well to draw water. He asked her for a drink. And in the following conversation, he said he could give her water that would take away her thirst forever. He said, "Whoever drinks of this water from the well will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him," Jesus said, "will never thirst. But the water that person will become a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. You know, this is an amazing concept, which implies that a spiritual thirst quenching would satisfy that yearning for peace. It'll give us joy, freedom from guilt, forgiveness. And not only will we have healthy bodies, healthy minds, but holier bodies, or at least holier minds and holier spirits. A sense of oneness with God. So don't only pay attention to the liquids that are so important to sustaining your physical life. Remember to invite the water of life into your body daily. God bless you.